huge news coming down in college football this weekend. And it only used to be, in the NFL where there was these massive coaching moves and it seemed like a million of them happened every year. Well, now that's happening in college football. Teams, USC, Louisiana State or LSU, Florida, all these teams were making moves to fire coaches during the season. And in doing so, they're trying to grease the runways to make sure they had their next coach lined up to come in and take over. What has forced this? NIL, transfer portal, early signing day. Nobody wants to be left out in the cold when it comes to being able to bring in recruits. And so you want to try to get that coach in place as soon as possible. So that's what a lot of these schools did, whether Ed Orgeron was coaching the remaining games or not. LSU has been on the hunt. They have been looking for quite some time. Why do you think guys like Mel Tucker and James Franklin got these massive deals? It wasn't because their schools wanted to just pay them more out of the goodness of their hearts. It's because they needed to pay them to make sure that they wouldn't be leaving for the likes of an LSU or a USC. And so that is where college football has gone now. It's not the fact that you want to, pay to take care of your guys. It's you pay them to prevent them from looking elsewhere. And that's kind of what we've seen. And so as you mentioned, some of these jobs that come open, you look at it and you're sitting there talking to your friends, water cooler talk, LSU, USC, Florida, Oklahoma, Notre Dame. I couldn't tell you the last time that there were 5 jobs that you could say you legitimately couldn't write the history of college football without. With the last 3 coaches at LSU winning national championships, Notre Dame and their long storied tradition, USC, the Men of Troy, Heisman trophies, national championships, with what they've been able to do, Oklahoma and all the history there, and then Florida as well. I mean, these are 5, you could argue, of the top 10 jobs in college football, and all of them have been open. And they've been poaching from each other, which is something that we have never really seen in college football before. And this is why I think some of these fan bases are so upset. Some of these universities are so frustrated right now. And maybe some of them saw it coming. Maybe Notre Dame saw Brian Kelly maybe looking with a wondering eye. I always thought that he's someone that would go to the NFL. Obviously thought he had capped out at Notre Dame. We'll get into all that. But when you are a fan of a program that you believe to be a destination job, and a coach leaves that program not to go to the NFL, which I think Oklahoma fans, Lincoln Riley's been tied to the Dallas Cowboys last year. There's all these rumors about him going to the NFL. Like, okay, that may hurt a little bit. You may get upset and, okay, we got to find our next coach. But the reality is, like, they're taking that move to go to a different level. If you're moving within college in the NCAA and you think that your program is one of the elite ones, a lot of times you ask yourself, like, where would the coach go? Where would they want to be? Unless there's some strong allure because they're an alumnus or whatever it might be, from one of these other programs. The famous example, is Dabo Swinney, played at Alabama. He's coaching at Clemson. Should that job come open, the allure of home is very strong. And I get that. And I would never, being a guy who went to college 45 minutes from where they grew up, I completely understand. Very few jobs I would ever want to get in to coach in college football. Number one, depending upon the head coach, but 2, its location. And if it was in Columbus, Ohio, and if it was Ohio State for me, well, that's something that I'd have to heavily consider and probably look in on it. But I'm not trying to go coach all over the place. And that's how I look with some of these coaches. If there's a tie there, there's a reason for them to go back, that I think people understand a little more. I think fans are having a real hard time right now grasping, in schools and even players for that matter, of, hey, we came to this school. It was elite. You sold us on how elite it was. And now you're leaving this elite program to go to another elite program. And that's where that disconnect is beginning to happen. And I think, this week has been exhausting for some college football fans. They've been sitting here trying to figure out what's going on. This is something that they've never experienced before, because we haven't even played the conference championship games. Forget about bowl games. Like, the season technically is still going on. We do not know who the champions of the conferences are. That is still hanging out in the air, let alone the final 4 teams that could be making the playoff. And the irony is that a couple of those teams could be having new coaches. There could be switcheroos in there. And I know that there's no loyalty among thieves. And since we're talking about these college football coaches, and the honor has always been in the dollar, very rarely are they turning down more money to be able to stay somewhere for a little bit less. You do see it, and it does happen. And I'll never begrudge anyone of this. It's a free market capitalistic society. If you can get paid more for your skills and wares somewhere else, then you know what? You go take it, you go do it, and don't think twice about it. You don't have to apologize for anybody. Now, some of the things you say leading into it, some of the things you say afterwards, how you potentially handle your exit, those are all things that could come up for criticize, but I'll never criticize anyone for taking more cash.